All right, now we're going to set up the views. First thing we want to do while we're in the layout paper, okay, is turn on that viewport. All right, and this is just a generic 2D viewport. And what we're going to do here is this. If we take a look at this viewport, right, and the general layout here, what we want to do is we want to think about where each of those views go, right? So you can see we have our top view, front, right, and left view, as well as the isometric. What I would recommend is you could start with your default viewport or your regular 2D viewport as the top view, and then project the front, project the right, project the left, then reuse the top view for your isometric view, and simply project the top view back as the last view here. Let's see how we're going to do that. Okay, so here's the view and the viewport. If I double click into the model here, you can see what the current view orientation is. It's top view. What I'm going to do here is keep it in top view, and you'll notice here is 2D wireframe. If I do zoom, enter, E, enter, that's zoom extents. Here's the entire model, right? The next thing I want to do is take a look at the scale. I know that the views should be shown at 1:1. If I set up the view scale now, I can see how much room I need, right? You have to think about dimensions and other notes. So if I need to adjust, I can switch back to the paper simply by double-clicking outside of the viewport. I'm in the paper now, and I could simply grab those grips and adjust. I could continue to simply select the viewport and reposition it as well. All right. What I would recommend then is after you created all the views is to lock each of the viewports. Right. For right now, we'll just leave it like this. We could center it in there if we want, but don't change the scale. What we're going to be doing is taking a look at the Home tab and looking at modeling here, and we're going to be using Sol View to develop the views, and then looking at Sol Draw to render the views. For the isometric, we'll use the Solid Profile or Sol Prof to render those lines. Let's start first with Sol View. Okay, now if you take a look at the command line, you need to follow the sequence very, very carefully. What we're going to be producing here are orthographic projections. So I'll use O and then enter. And the first thing I'm going to project is this side of the viewport. So click on this edge, click on the midpoint, then drag the mouse. What you're doing now is you're going to specify the center of the front view. I'll click in this area generally, and you can see the view. Now I can continue left clicking to set the position of that viewport. When I'm satisfied the location of that view, I hit enter, and then now I'm prompted to clip the viewport. So I'm using 2 points here to create the viewport in that layout. The last thing you want to do here is give each view a name. This is going to be the front view, so I'll just call it front and then enter. What I'll do next is proceeding with the front view here. You'll notice that I'm still in the Sol View command. I'll use O again, and then use the side of that front view, click on that, and then move the mouse and left click again. This will show you the position of that right view. You can continue adjusting with left clicks until you are satisfied, hit enter, and then once again with your left click you'll be specifying the view port. Now, those are the boundaries of the viewport. So as I continue, click back into the front view, right? Oh, sorry, I needed to give it a name, so let's call it right view. And then now we can proceed. So once again, O for ortho. It's going to be the left view, so we're going to use the left side of this viewport. Click on that edge, and then over here somewhere, left click again. There's our left view. Keep adjusting with the left clicks, hit enter when you're satisfied, and then specify the 2 points that represents the boundary of that viewport. Lastly, give it a name. Call this one left. Alright, so I'll go ahead and hit enter again or escape to get out of the command. Right? Now these down here, these viewports here, you'll see they're on a separate layer. they're actually on the Viewport layer. If I show you real quick here with quick properties, you can see that this is a viewport created by AutoCAD. It's on a separate layer. Now this viewport, which is our regular viewport, I'm going to move it over to the top right here, double click in that viewport, and I'll set this as the southeast isometric view. Now, as we proceed, you're going to see that we can make this viewport, let's say, a shaded or solid view of the model. But we could also use solid profile to render the visible and hidden edges of the model as well. I'll leave it like this for now, and when we're ready, I'll show you what I mean. Now we also need to produce the projected top view. So once again, what we could do is go back to Sole View, O for Ortho. Now we're going to be using the top edge of the front view. So I click on this edge and then project it upwards. Once I find the location that I want that view to be, hit enter, and then define the 2 points for that viewport boundary. Lastly, we give it a name. Okay, so far, let's hit escape to exit. So far we've got our views here, but these are just 3D views of the model. They haven't been rendered to show the visible and hidden line edges. But what we're going to do here is let's take a quick look at the model. You can see here that in the model, if I change to wireframe, nothing new has been added to the model, right? Just in the layout we have these views. But also what we can see is with our layers here, we've got a whole bunch of new layers. Okay, so if you take a look in the main window here, you can see we have layers for the front, layers for the left, and layers for the right. The new layers that were created were specifically for dimensions, for hidden lines, and for visible lines. And here what you can see is also that the line types have been attached. The only thing that is default and shown in white here are the layer colors. Now if we want to standardize it for our class purposes, let's go ahead and use some filters. I'll show you a really neat trick here so you can identify properties of layers and create filters to group layers with the similar properties. So for instance, if I come over here to the left side of my layer manager, I want to use my property filter. And what I'm going to do here is I'll create 3 new filters. One for visible, lines, and you'll notice here in the name area, I'll leave the asterisk at the front. This way, any layers that end in VIS will be selected. Okay, so you can see here all those layers for the orthographic views are grouped in this particular property filter. Let's create another one, and this will be for hidden lines. And once again, for the filtering here, I'll look for properties that end in HID. And then lastly, create another one here, and this will be for dimension lines, or dimension layers, right? And once again, I'll leave the asterisk in front and simply type DIM. You can see all of the other orthographic layers are gathered in that group. And the reason for that is so that all at once, for example, with the hidden lines, if I use that filter, I can select all the layers with the selection window there and change their colors all at once. And then for the dimension layers, also change those colors to blue. And then finally our visible lines to cyan. Okay? Now the only other layers that we're going to create in addition to these are going to be the profile visible and the profile hidden. Why don't we take a look at that, right? Make sure that once you're done here, you always set the filters back to all. So what we've done here is just basically prepare the layers so that for our class standard and for our purposes, the line work, when it's generated, will have the correct line weight and color appearance.